Hydrasynth versus the core Wavestate. Which one is better? Which one do I use more? Um, obviously, if you've been on this channel for a little while, I got the Hydrasynth core Wavestate, JDXA, Model D, MPC, right? SP404, DJ, Serato, Pioneer DJ Serato. Sorry about that. And the Yamaha RS7000. So, usually, to rewind a little bit, I got the RS7000 a little while ago. I didn't have to pay for it. Hydrasynth, out of all these things that I mentioned, was probably the first one I got out of, the JDXA, the Wavestate, MPC, and Model D. So a lot of my early beats had a lot of Hydrasynth signature sound. You can hear the Hydrasynth on it. Before I was around that time, I think I was using the Korg mini log and the Hydrasynth, so that was my main combo, and I was happy with that. What I can say is that eventually I got the Wavestate and I got the JDXA, so the Hydrasynth became mainly just used as a controller. It has the polyphonic aftertouch, so it's the best controller that I have, right? A lot of its controls are hands-on, even though this is a digital synth. Not gonna lie, this is a digital synth. A lot of its stuff is hands-on. It's damn near knob per function. More than anything else I have here, except for the Model D. This is the most knob per function thing I have. JDXA is a lot of knob per function too, but in order to get to a lot of the advanced stuff, you gotta do a lot of menu diving. As opposed to this, you don't gotta do as much. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep the music going. You know what I'm saying? You gotta keep this thing on. I don't have to do as much. Most of the things I want, I could just literally, except for like the modulation. I got going to the macros and the mod matrix and all that, and then but after that, a couple buttons, and you where you gotta be. Oscillator, you press the oscillator button, you get the oscillators, the mutants, and like I said, it's really not per function. It's a very strong synth. It's not as intense as the JDXA. The sound isn't as powerful, but it gets the job done. Especially if you really just want to turn it up, you go to this amp level and you turn it all the way up, and it sounds great. Only thing mixing from this that most synths has is a sequencer. Most synths have a sequencer, and I guess they figured you didn't need it. In this day and age, most people are using a computer. If they're going straight doorless hardware, they're using something that has a sequencer. Everything except for the Hydrasynth and the Wavestate, coincidentally, don't have sequencers, which is why I felt like it was a good subject to touch on. The similarities and differences. I would say the strength of the Hydrasynth is the main strength is the polyphonic aftertouch. Not a lot of keyboards have polyphonic aftertouch to this level. And a lot of the fact that it's really easy to just change the sound on this thing. There's a lot of advanced stuff too. To really unlock this synth, you gotta go with the mod matrix. With most modern synths, you gotta go with the mod matrix to really unlock how powerful it is. And for those who don't know what a mod matrix is, it's basically a system or a function where I can have like my LFO affect my pitch. So if I make the LFO go faster, the pitch will go up or down. And a lot of times, that's really what changes the sound, mutates the sound. And we only got two hands, so there's only so much we could do. Usually if I wanted to do that, I'd have to turn the LFO as I raise and lower the pitch, which is like it's not cohesive, it's not intuitive, it's a lot. But yeah, I'd say that was the main strength of the Hydrasynth. It could sound like damn near everything. It has 5 envelopes, 5 LFOs, and 2 filters. It has a bunch of effects built in. The keys are pretty good, even though this is the Explorer version, right? The keys are pretty good. And it sounds great. Not as powerful as this. even just on the digital side of this is just very intense. But like I said, I have this, so I could use it as comparison. If you don't have anything like this is basically gets the job done the way it's supposed to, right? Now onto the wave state, which personally I like this more than the Hydrasynth. There's even more you can do with the wave state. It's more menu diving, not gonna lie, but once you learn your way around the machine, I feel like it's not too complicated. Coincidentally, the concept of the wave state sounds extremely complicated. It's a different synth. It's the most unique synth I have here. It has wave sequencing, where basically each step plays a different sample or sound or whatever you want to have it. And it also doesn't have a traditional sequence. So like this has a sequencer, this has a sequencer, SP404 has a sequencer, R7000 have a sequencer. It doesn't have a sequencer where you can make a sequence like that. What it does is, it's a little hard to explain, but each step is a different sound. So the sequencer is actually, you hold the note down once, the whole sequence plays. But it's not a traditional sequencer. So I mean, I guess you can actually get done what you needed to do it when it, like, you know, compared to a real sequencer, but not in the traditional sense. You know, a lot of things you have to do with the machine, right? And it has a bunch of lanes which makes up its wave sequencing. I'm not very good at explaining this, not gonna lie, but trying my best here. It has a lot. It has like what, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm looking at the software right now. It has 6 lanes, right? It also comes with software. Hydrasynth doesn't, so that's a plus. But it has 6 lanes and a master lane, which is basically how you make up your wave sequence. So in order to get a traditional sequencer, you'd have to work this out a certain way, which is not impossible, but that's just not what it's built for. It has a bunch of samples in it. It has a basic synth engine. Not like most other synth engines, but you know, it has an LFO. Let's see how many LFOs this thing has. It has an LFO. You know, has an envelope. Has a filter. All right, but like I said, it's not a traditional synth. But the reason why I like this better is because, like I said, it deals in samples, and the samples are just they're pretty good samples, and you can do a lot with these samples. You can input your own samples too, and I feel like the only thing that makes this Hydrasynth better than the wave state, in my opinion, is the polyphonic aftertouch. I feel like if the wave state had polyphonic aftertouch, I wouldn't even be using this, especially if it had a polyphonic aftertouch that this has. Now I can say that's me, and maybe I'm a little biased because I have the Roland JDXA. I like the digital side on this. It's not as powerful as the Hydrasynth, but it gets the job done for me. So the Hydrasynth digital side doesn't get used as much as it was before I had this. I completely just started using this for the digital side. But the wave state still has a place that this doesn't even come close to. The wave sequencing, the samples that it has, and that really changes the personality of the synth. It changes the whole use of the synth. As of late, usually I've been using the wave state for either string samples or arpeggiators sounds, but it can do so much more, and I just haven't gotten around to it because I'm still just loving the way that this sounds. If I could take one function from each, I would say I wish the wave state had polyphonic aftertouch. And for the Hydrasynth, I don't know what I would take from the wave state to add to it. And that doesn't mean that the Hydrasynth is better. I forgot to say the wave state also has 4 layers. You can do the wave sequencing 4 different times, which, come on, what are you talking about here? And the Hydrasynth Deluxe version has 2 engines. You could layer both engine and kind of act like, you know, it has half the amount of layers that the wave state has. So that's great too. Maybe it would make more sense if I compared those two, but I don't have the Hydrasynth Deluxe. And then there's a deluxe version of the wave state. There's a wave state SE, which is, you know, the big keyboard sound. size situation. They also have a module version, much like the Hydrasynth, which is actually what I prefer to get because I have too many keyboards here. So if God is willing, let me not even say that. Let me speak it into existence. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to get the module, and it's going to go on my rack, which is underneath my desk. You can't see it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm manifesting that right now. But back to what I was saying. For my setup, and for what I'm doing, the Hydrasynth plays a very important role, but not really on the sound engine side. Like I use it to control everything, and most of my songs, if I wanted to, I do add the Hydrasynth a lot, but mainly as like a layer on top or underneath the JDXA. But most of my songs, you know, if I didn't have the Hydrasynth, most people probably wouldn't know. It wouldn't change the song so much, especially nowadays. Maybe, you know, a couple years ago, the Hydrasynth was a main aspect of my studio. Like I said, once I got this, kind of took the place of this, right? And you know, I know there's a lot of people who want to watch this going to think I'm bugging because the Hydrasynth, technically, the engine, the digital engine, is actually more powerful than this digital engine. But I like the way this one sounds better, right? Maybe I'm a little biased because I really like this keyboard, this synth. And like I said, the Wavestate is not. I can't do what I do on the Wavestate on any of these things. I could try my best. It would never work. I'd have to not in one sitting, right? I could make 4 different patterns from this that might sound similar to the Wavestate, and that's only, and it still wouldn't, because the Wavestate is continuously evolving, right? So it's just a beast of its own. And honestly, for a combination when it comes to the MPC one, which I think will go better, Hydrasynth from Wavestate, I think the Wavestate is actually a better combination with the MPC one. Cause like I said, it has 4 layers, so that's basically 4 different instruments right there. Each layer doesn't have to do the same thing. That's amazing. That's Korg for you. You know, Korg way to be doing this thing. And shout out to ASM too, not the front. The Hydrasynth is great. They really did what they supposed to do with this machine. They have a new one now too called the Leviasynth, which is mainly FM. The Hydrasynth can approximate FM with its mutants, but the Leviasynth is geared more towards FM to my understanding. But like I said, when it comes to matching this with the MPC, the Hydrasynth is great. The Wavestate is actually better. And like I said, the Wavestate had true polyphonic aftertouch. I wouldn't have the Hydrasynth. You know, I would have replaced it a long time ago, because you know the Hydrasynth has a lot of overlap with the JDXA sonic wise. Enough that, like I said, nowadays most people probably can't notice if I took out the Hydrasynth or not. With the Wavestate, you would notice, right? The Model D, you would notice the bass is different from the Model D's bass than the JDXA. Let me move this out the way. JDXA bass is straight, it's great, but it's stereo, it's more wider, it's not as gritty. This bass tears the whole show apart, right? And that's what I mean, right? Like the Hydrasynth doesn't do anything that nothing else in my studio can do, right? And like I said, maybe I'm a little biased, but yeah, I really feel like the Wavestate wins over the Hydrasynth, you know, except for the polyphonic aftertouch. I don't see it's not. This is just, you know, come on. Wavestate is dope. Hydrasynth dope too. Wavestate is dope, and Korg really did his thing. The pros and cons of the Wavestate, like I said, no polyphonic aftertouch. The real estate on the board, even the SE version, is still very compact, which I completely disagree with. I feel like the SE version should have had a sequencer, and they should have spread out the real estate, so everything could have been knob per function. Because I feel like if they did spread out, it has enough space on that to make everything knob per function, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's a huge keyboard, right? That's the cons of it. Like I said, the pros of it is everything I just said in the video. You can input your own samples. I would also add an external audio input where you can sample in. That's what I think they should add. It doesn't have one. In fact, you got to do you can't even sample in. It just plays samples back. and then you do all the editing of the samples in the software library, which, you know, having everything going, being able to come in one machine without having to use anything else is great. But speaking of the software library and the software plugin, it's great to have something that actually does come with the plugin in case you don't want to always have to use that. I don't have to touch the Wavestate at all. I can just open the plugin, choose all the sounds from this, and control it with the Hydrasynth, right? I have to have the Wavestate plugged in to do that, but I can do that, right? And then there's a native version too, which is I like this UI better. Some people like that UI better too, and you don't have to have the Hydrasynth at all for that. So I mean, you don't have to have the Wavestate. Oh my gosh, see? But the Hydrasynth does its job. Don't sleep on the Hydrasynth. I would say if you was getting your first synth and you already had, you know, a computer or which had a sequencer or MPC, Hydrasynth is a great choice, and it will last for a long time. You probably won't sell it due to the controller, the keys, and probably find Aftertouch. The only other thing I think on the market right now that has better is the Expressive E, and like I said, that has a little better though. Would I recommend the Wavestate as a first synth? No, not your first. I feel like if you had synths before and you understand how they work, and you just want one that can do a lot, yes, I recommend the Wavestate as a jack of all trades, do everything synth. The Hydrasynth could be that too, but I would recommend the Wavestate. Like I said, it's 4 layers. You can do a lot. You can import samples, so you can basically never get tired of this. And with the wave sequencing, it just takes it to a whole nother level. So, you know, I would say my first choice is always this. It's my baby, and then Wavestate, then the Hydrasynth, in my opinion. Model D does the bass, but I can do bass with this. Wavestate also doesn't have, you know, preset good bass. You can, like I said, put your own samples in and do what you gotta do, but it doesn't really have a bass. That's pretty good. The Hydrasynth bass is a little bit better, but you know, still I'd rather use these two for basses. Another thing about the Hydrasynth is if you have Flex or FL Studios Flex, you know, Serum, Citrus, and all that, they can basically get the job done on the Hydrasynth more or less. And once again, I haven't seen any plugin, any other instrument, synth, anywhere that can do what the Wavestate do. I think the closest I have is Falcon, and it still can't do the same thing. It can probably get the same sound, but it'll take a lot of editing. But then that's neither here nor there. But you already know, like I said, I would choose the Wavestate. Some people choose the Hydrasynth. That's up to them. That's my opinion. That's what I'm doing. You already know, Dream Bones President, Teflon Shogun, and we out.